Alright, kiddos, we are cruising right along in the invertebrates. We have talked about porifera, those are your sponges. We have talked about cnidaria, that's going to be your jellyfish and your coral, hydra, and sea anemones. Now we are on to Annelida. Sometimes it's just called annelid, that A can be dropped. These are your worms, okay, so nothing too gross here. There are 3 phyla of worms: flatworms, roundworms, and segmented worms. So I'm pretty sure you could infer what shape flatworms are going to be. They're going to be flat. And then you could infer what shape roundworms are going to be. They're going to be round. Segmented worms, you might know what that means if you know what the word segment means. If not, I'm going to teach you here in a few minutes, so don't stress out too much yet. So all of our annelids, they have bilateral symmetry with a head and a tail. So remember that prefix bi means 2, so we can cut these guys right down the middle to make 2 halves. Think of the worm, it has a head, and it does have a butt. Okay, so we're going to be able to cut that worm straight down the middle with one single line, hence the bilateral symmetry. Worms are the first organism to actually be pretty well developed. They have tissues, they have organs, and they have organ systems, and we're going to talk about each of those just a little bit here. You can see in this picture, this is a flatworm. Okay, its fancy name is called Platyhelminthes, in case you're wondering. You can kind of see here that he's got some things that look like an eyeball, and there's this hollow tube running down the middle, possibly a digestive tract. Maybe it's its mouth up here and its anus down here. So we can kind of use this to show that it is developing organs and organ systems. So we're going to start with flatworms. These are the most basic, and then we're going to get more and more advanced. So flatworms have flat, soft bodies. Okay. These are tapeworms and flukes. So you're going to watch some videos today that are probably going to gross you out, because you know that's my job in life, is to gross you kids out as best I can. So tapeworms, you can get tapeworms from certain types of meat if you're not careful in how you cook your meat. And they're really nasty. They go down into your intestines below your stomach, and they grow really, 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 really long. You're going to watch a video of a tapeworm being pulled out of a dog. It's pretty intense. Flukes, these guys are smaller worms. They don't get quite as long. These guys go in through your feet, actually, so no good there. But you can see that both of these worms are going to be the shape flat. Okay, flatworms. So they have a very simple brain, so these guys can actually use some intelligence. Think of that tapeworm. When it gets in your mouth, it has to think, all right, now I need to swim down into its intestine, and as soon as I get there, I need to start making some babies. They do have eye spots, so I kind of showed you on that picture on the last slide. They don't have eyes, but they do have eye spots. You can see here in this picture. So all they can detect is light or dark. So imagine if I turned the lights off, you would be able to tell me, well, Miss Riddle, it's really dark. You're right. And if I turn the lights back on, you would be able to say, Miss Riddle, the lights are on. You're right. That's all they can see. They can't see your face. They can't see their brother or sister. They can't see their babies. They can only see if it's light or dark out. And then they have these special cells called flame cells. Think of like a firefighter. Okay, when he goes to a flame, he's going to put water on the fire. Same thing here. The flame cells are going to get rid of extra water. All flatworms live in some type of aquatic environment. This really colorful guy on the bottom, he lives at the bottom of the ocean or somewhere where there's some coral. And then the flatworm up top, he's going to live in a little like lake or stream or river until he might end up in your body, and your body is filled with water. So all of these live in aquatic environments. Just a little bit more about these guys. They are what's called parasitic. So I've already described this to you. They live inside of your body. So a parasite is an organism that lives in or on its host, and it takes nutrients from you. So think of that tapeworm. If you end up having a tapeworm at some point in your life, which hopefully you don't, as long as you're safe with your meat, the tapeworm will live in your stomach, and you will provide it food, water, shelter, and homeostasis. Your body will give it everything it needs in order to survive while it's hurting you. That tapeworm is actually stealing your food. It's stealing your nutrients. It's going to get you sick. So you're getting hurt while it is having a nice vacation inside of your gut. Okay, so parasites are nasty. Moving on to roundworms. These look like smooth, thin tubes. Think of a piece of spaghetti. It looks just like a piece of spaghetti. So there's a couple ascars, hookworms, and pinworms. These guys, we're going to watch some videos on these as well. Okay. Some of them are parasitic, while others are just roundworms. So these guys also have a mouth and an anus or a butt. So they have bilateral symmetry. They do have separate male and female genders. So we talked about the sponges. They were both male and female, not these. A boy worm and a girl worm got to get together and kiss if they want to make little wormy babies. Okay, so here's a nice picture up in the corner. Kind of looks like a soft pretzel. You can see that it is very round, though, hence the name roundworm. So there's some really nasty pictures. So what you're seeing here is the red tube on the outside is actually your intestine. Not your intestine, it's someone's intestine. And this person has what's called an ascar infection. So they have all of these worms just living in their stomach, in their gut. And maybe you can see a problem with this. If your stomach and gut are all full of worms, do you think you'd ever feel hungry? No, because you got worms filling up on the inside of your stomach. So these worms eventually could kill a person if you don't get them treated well enough. And there's plenty of tests. It's weird. You can poop in a little cup and send it to a doctor, and they can tell if your poop has worms in it. So there are ways to get treated. Don't scare yourself too much. But if you ever feel like your stomach doesn't feel so good, definitely just make sure you get to the doctor. It might just be that you ate some food that was bad, but I'm definitely just looking out for you guys. A little bit more about roundworms. So parasitic worms have hooks and suckers to stay inside of the host. So think of your body. You eat food, let's say waffles, okay? And then you go to lunch, and you eat a peanut butter sandwich with some goldfish and Oreos, of course. And then you go home and you eat dinner. And what's a really good dinner? Let's say you have some chicken tenders and french fries with some hot sauce, because I really like hot sauce. Well, you eat all of this stuff, eventually it's got to come out. You got to poop it out. So your body is constantly moving food through. You eat and you poop. You eat and you poop. Well, these worms want to stay inside of your body, so they need to have some sort of adaptation in order to stay inside. So they have developed two adaptations. The first one is a hook, okay? Just like it sounds, just like a pirate or a fishing hook. It's actually going to spear into your intestine, and it's going to hold on to there. It's going to pierce it. It might hurt a little bit. Another one is going to be a sucker. So think of like a suction cup, okay? It's going to actually suction cup onto the side of your intestine. So both of those are going to prevent it from being pooped out, because as soon as it's pooped out, it's going to die. It goes flush down the toilet, bye-bye. The roundworm doesn't want that, so it's got to stay inside of you. So here you can see some hooks and some suckers. The hooks, you can see this bottom one pretty well right here. Okay, so it actually has little hooks that are going to go jabbing into your intestine. And then here you have some suckers, just like a suction cup, that's going to kind of hold it into place. And then if your body, let's say you start to take medicine to fix this, it actually can form a shell, a protective shell, and curl up into a little ball and survive inside of your stomach. So a lot of times you might have to go on medicine for a long time to get rid of these guys. And the last one is called a segmented worm. These have bodies with a lot of segments. So think about a movie. Okay, if you go to the movie title menu, like just the menu, you can pick different scenes. You can start at the very beginning, you can start 10 minutes in, you can start 45 minutes into the movie, or maybe you just want to see how it ends. Those are all segments. Or think of a book. You know how books have chapters? Those are all segments of the book. So same thing here with the worms. These worms are going to have little parts of their body, little segments. There's two examples. The first one is leeches, and the second one is earthworms. So most of you know what an earthworm is, so that's nice and easy. When it rains, you go outside, and these little critters are all over the sidewalk. A lot of people go fishing with them. There's a movie out, How to Eat Fried Worms. Okay. Leeches, these guys actually suck your blood. So they live in small streams or creeks or rivers. And if you happen to come in contact with them, it'll suck your blood until it gets full, and then it'll leave, and it'll leave you a little boo-boo. So leeches are parasitic as well. They are the very simplest animal with a brain, so finally we're actually seeing a full brain here, not just part of a brain. So earthworms and leeches are extremely intelligent. You're going to watch a video about a leech, and you can see him using his brain to sniff out where the blood is. It doesn't want to just latch on anywhere. It wants to go where the good source of blood is. So you can see here finally in this picture, you see how it has little rings going around the worm? Okay. Those little rings are all segments of the worm, and we're going to play with a worm at some point this week. We're going to do the earthworm lab. So the brain helps them detect food and predators. So like I said, the leech looks for blood, and a lot of times predators. So if a worm can kind of sense that a bird's coming, it might be able to bury itself down into the soil. A little bit more on these guys. They do eat soil to obtain their nutrients. So earthworms don't eat bugs or bacteria or anything like that. They just eat the soil, and they kind of extract out the good stuff from the soil. They do have a basic heart, so we will not be killing our worms. Let me say that again. We will not kill our worms, so we will not be able to see its heart. But if you look kind of closely, you can see it from the outside because their skin is a little bit translucent or clear. So you might be able to see their heart whenever we do that. So oxygen and carbon dioxide, same as in our body. We breathe in oxygen, we breathe out carbon dioxide. They do the same thing, except they don't have a mouth. They just use their skin. The stuff is going to diffuse, remember that word, it's going to breathe using diffusion from their skin. So the oxygen is just going to leak into their skin, the carbon dioxide is just going to leak out of their skin. So that's why worms have to stay moist. So when a worm dries up on the sidewalk, that's why it dies. It's not because it got dried out. It's actually because it's suffocated to death. And then it does get dried out. So worms need to have a nice moist environment in order to live. Earthworms have regressed or gone back a little bit. They are both boys and girls, males and females, but they cannot fertilize their own eggs. So they still have to pick a gender, and then they have to go find a partner somewhere. So maybe the earthworm wants to be a girl today and wants to make babies, so she has to slither somewhere and go find a boy worm, and they gotta kiss and then make some little babies. Worms are actually super good for the soil. A lot of people will buy worms and just throw them into their garden. They don't even care if, about the worm. They just want it for the garden because their poop actually is a really good fertilizer. They add air to the soil. They kind of loosen up the soil. Think about like going to the beach. Okay, if you've ever been to the beach and you start digging in the sand, at first it's a little bit hard until you start to break it up and get it loose. Same thing here. So the worms kind of creep down into the soil and they break it up so that the roots of the plants can grow down even deeper. So worms and plants actually work what's called symbiotically. They work together to make a better plant. So their poop actually is a really good fertilizer. So I'm going to link a bunch of really gross videos to this post. I'm warning you now, some of them are really gross, okay? If you get to a video that is too gross to watch, that's totally fine. You don't have to watch it, okay? But I really want you to, because some of them are super duper cool. So if you have any questions, please raise your hand. Miss Sewell or I or someone else will come around and help you out. If you are confused of where to go next, please look at the front board or your Google Classroom post to figure out where you need to go. And hopefully I didn't gross you out too much with those videos.